Give it up for Danielle DiMartino.
Danielle DiMartino.
Danielle DiMartino Booth.
Is Fed Day, so our first request for guests always goes out to Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research. Why? Because, well, she used to work at the Fed. She knows what's going on there, and she worked at the Fed down in Dallas. But she's always got data that I never even think of looking at, and I probably should. And today does not disappoint. Danielle, welcome here to our studio. What data are you looking at today as it relates to rents?
Well, it hit the terminal just a few hours ago, the Cleveland Fed new tenant rent index. It's right on the terminal. It's a quarterly figure. Doesn't come out very often, obviously. But at the December the 18th FOMC meeting, Chair Powell noted that particular metric, and he suggested that market-based core PCE, if you took the imputation, the sole imputation, that's not a market-based inflation number, if you remove the sole imputation of owner's equivalent rent and then substitute in market rents, which were created by this Cleveland Fed new tenant rent index, that you actually get the true gauge of shelter inflation.
I've got it, and it's falling like a rock. So if the Fed today, how do you think they would look at a piece of data like that? And again, folks, the data from the Cleveland Fed shows that rents are actually declining rapidly, so suggesting that that's not a driver.
Yeah, that's a negative 9.8% you're looking at for the 1 quarter.
Not in New York City, though. But.
Not in here. No. But again, this is a nationwide gauge. But what's changed is since December is now on a year-over-year basis, we're at negative 0.3. That is not just the rent index. That is market-based core PCE in its entirety, with the new tenant rent index substituted in for owner's equivalent rent, which again, we wouldn't know to have done it had Powell not suggested it at the podium. That's the whole reason that we started tracking this particular metric. How would you like to be a Cleveland Fed staffer having to show everybody around that great big oval table at the Eccles building that we're in deflation?
Interesting.
So if you take a number like 3% GDP, you're going to tell me, look under the hood, dummy.
I'm not going to use the word dummy. That's just flat out
Okay.
rude.
I'm
was raised
She's
better.
from Texas.
I am from Texas. No, but I will tell you that in the fourth quarter, I'm reading here, let's see, non-residential fixed investment. Okay, so this is like not construction. This is just businesses. That was negative 3% in the fourth quarter GDP report. And then we had the tariff terror and all this stock building and front running. So that number popped up to 10.3% in the first quarter GDP report. And this morning when it came out, it went kaboom, 1.9%. From 10.3 to 1.9. And on top of that, we did see a pickup in consumption, but it went from 0.5 to 1.4%, which was shy of the consensus estimate of 1.5%. So it came in at 1.4%. What we're seeing right now is a seesaw yo-yo exercise in GDP math between inventory and import-export math that's throwing the numbers all about. It's not great news that imports crashed. That is not good news. That's a sign of what we're talking about. Personal consumption expenditures, missing expectations, coming in at 1.4% growth. It is not business investment or consumption that's driving GDP.
So if you're the Fed, if you had Fed Chairman Jay Powell right here, you would say cut today, right?
Well, I would, yes. And I'm not the PhD, but 786 others inside the institution might be making that suggestion to him, just as many did last July. And last July, he said, no, I'm worried about inflation. I still feel like the labor market is solid. So we're going to hold. And then what did he have to do? He had to come in with a cavalry in September with a 50 basis point rate cut that followed it. So it feels a lot like the summer of 2024 right now.
What would get us to the point where it's neither stimulative nor, weighs on the economy? The neutral, I don't know what the neutral rate is.
Well,
we'd have to go well beyond that, is what you're saying.
Apparently we do, if the economy has actually hit deflation.
Yeah.
And that's highly problematic. We've seen jobs are hard to get in the consumer confidence data. We've seen that rise for 7 months in a row, lowest since March of 2021. You don't see that number rise consecutively. Job insecurity rise consecutively for 7 consecutive quarters outside of any U.S. recession. It just doesn't happen. It'll bounce around, but you don't get 7 months in a row of rising joblessness, rising job insecurity.
Danielle, you live in Dallas. You worked at the Dallas
I
Fed.
do, and I do. I live in a bubble. I live in an economic bubble.
Talk to us about that Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Is there anything to stop what I think is reasonable and healthy growth of that Metroplex?
Well, right now it's housing.
Okay.
So we had, we've been getting some really interesting stories out about smaller home investors still buying all cash. And of course, they're levered. It's just how they're levered, we don't know. But we have been getting more and more stories about the biggest investors starting to liquidate the portfolios that they purchased. For heaven's sake, Tarrant County, Fort Worth, that was in 2021, 54% of all home purchases were by investors. Dallas County, it was 51% of all home purchases.
Is that like
again
the Black
in 2021?
Rocks of the world?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean,
that is.
And
now they're reversing it, so it is residential investment that is really feeling it in the DFW area.
Okay. I mean, how many companies come in here, John, and they're like, "Oh, we're moving this to Dallas."
Oh, no. And
Unbelievable.
that's with corporate relocations. Continuing. The exodus out of California and Illinois continues.
Yep. It's awesome. Great story. Danielle, thank you so much for coming in. I know you're busy today on Fed Day. Danielle DiMartino Booth, CEO and Chief Strategist at QI Research, giving us some thoughts here on this Fed Day here. Again,